Everyone, my name is Haydn and I'm a full-time software engineer and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to learn about AsyncIO and how it can speed up our web requests. So when we're requesting Pokemon in the example I'll show you later, how it can go from synchronous and taking quite a long time to asynchronous and being super quick. Okay, so let's first have a little introduction about what AsyncIO is. It's basically a concurrency framework built into Python that allows you to make asynchronous requests or code basically through something called coroutines. And then this can speed up essentially when you have input-output heavy operations in Python, you can use this code. So for example, what is essentially happening is rather than running synchronously where you run one thing, you request the information, you get it back, and then you run the next, and then you run the next, and then you run the next. With async, you basically run, and then whilst it's waiting for its kind of input-output or its information back, you can move on to the next one whilst that one's still waiting for the information to come back. Let's say you've made a web request somewhere, you can send off the next one and the next one and the next one, and then when this information comes back, you can continue and so on and so forth for these ones. So in theory, your longest time is actually the time it takes you to make the longest request of your operation, rather than synchronously, it's a summation of all your requests. So a real life example of this would be, think of somebody who is playing lots of games of chess. So they're in a room and they're playing lots of games of chess against different people. Let's say they've got 10 people they're playing against. One way the person who's playing all these people could play chess against them is to finish one game and then finish that, move on to the next one, and then get checkmate, finish that game, move on. That would be a synchronous operation. One game at a time, finish, then the next game, finish, and the next game. Whereas asynchronous would be the player would play one move against, on game one, then move to the next chessboard, play the next move on that one. So by the time, and then the next one on the third chessboard, and then the next one on the fourth chessboard, so keep playing essentially moves. And then by the time he gets back round to chessboard one, the other player's probably played their move, so then he can play the next one, and then so forth. So this would be kind of like a async operation, because he's not waiting for the response back from them, he's just moving on. They're just moving on. The chess player is just moving on to the next one, and then eventually that would be quicker than if you played one at a time and then stopped and played the next one at a time, and then stopped and played the next one at a time. Essentially, the longest game of chess will be the game that takes the longest, rather than if he was to play one game and then the next game, and then so play one game, finish, and then do the next game, finish. That would be a basic summation of all the games, which would be a lot longer. Okay, so let's jump over to the code now, and let's actually do an example of how we can do this in Python. Okay, so I've moved over to the PyCharm here, and I've got basically a blank file. I have created a virtual environment, and I've got two packages that we're going to need. One, requests, so we can make web requests, and then AsyncIO HTTP, which is a way to make asynchronous web requests. Okay, so what we're basically going to do is there's a Pokemon API that you can call, and it will give you back the name and details and information of the Pokemon. So what we're going to do is we're going to run this synchronously and then asynchronously. So if we start with by making a main function, I'm going to say let's run a synchronous and then run sync. And then we basically need to implement these two functions. I'm going to say def run sync is this. For now we're just going to pass, and then we've got another one called def run async. Now the first thing that you should probably know about asynchronous functions is that they have to be prefixed with the word async in front of them, so that Python knows that this is an asynchronous function and it will basically do special things. So this is basically the start of what we need, and next we're going to need basically the URL in order to get the Pokemon information. So I'm just going to make a function called get URL, which returns a string. We're going to need to go to https pokeapi.co.v2/pokemon, and then you have to give basically an integer of what Pokemon you want, and that will be on their website, but I'm just going to say give me a random integer between the values of 1 and 151, and then this will basically just make API call. So I think if you actually pop this into the browser, actually no. So if I show you, so if I just comment these out for a minute and go get URL, no, what do I need to do? I think request.get, isn't it? Yeah, come on. Request.get this URL, and if I print this, and also import requests. That should go to the top now. So if I run this, you can see we got a 404. Oh no, got the wrong URL. So it's should be this, and I think that should fix it. 200, nice. If I then get the, is it the response? No, so I can get the JSON of this, and then this should basically print us out. So this is a loads of information on a random Pokemon that I pulled out, but I think if we just ask for its name, this is Zubat, if you can see that. So I'm not that hot on Pokemon, but this is a Zubat Pokemon. So this is the Pokemon we just requested. Okay, cool. So in order to do this synchronously, basically what we are going to do is we're going to say we're going to set up what I'm going to do is here I'm going to say number of Pokemon equals, let's say we request 100 Pokemon, and then we're going to do this synchronously. So in order to do this synchronously, basically we just need to call that function 100 times and then see the results and then return. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say basically what I did before, request.get get URL.json, get me the name for something in range number of Pokemon. And then there's a package called prettyprint, which should prettyprint the thing out for me. So if I prettyprint result, I've not imported that, import prettyprint. So if I come down here now, I can delete my little test, run that again. Let me close this so that you guys can see better. Run this should run synchronously. There we go. As you can see in my console now, I've got a whole bunch, well, I've got 100 Pokemon names. Hopefully these all are, for fans of Pokemon, these all make sense to you. But yeah, we've basically done this 100 times. That's all dandy, but we should probably time this, right? So I'm going to make a timer decorator that's called synchronous, and let's make this timer decorator so that we've actually got so basically when we call our function, this is actually what's going to, this is our function that I've wrapped. So for example, in timer, run sync is what's going to be wrapped. So this is when we get it called. So I need to basically start the timer here. So timer time, and then I'm going to say something like name time took timer. Oh, sorry, time.time minus the start time, which is S, and then that should be basically our decorator sorted. Don't worry about that. Pokemon, and the synchronous timer took 5.2120 blah 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 seconds. Cool. So that's that. So this is the baseline we want to make, but we want to beat 5 seconds for requesting 100 Pokemon. So let's now implement our run synchronous function. So in order to run synchronously, we have to use that package that we imported in requirements.txt, which is this AsyncIO HTTP, so that it basically just does a little bit of lifting for us in order to run asynchronously. So in order to do that, we need a client session. We create this as session, then we asynchronously call with session.get. We run get URL similar to what we did before as response, and then we want to return our response.json, which is there. So basically once so this is going to do similar to the synchronous call. So this is basically doing this section here. But the problem is we have to wait for the response to happen before we can call JSON on it. So what we need to do there, and in order for an asynchronous function to get basically return and not blow up, you have to say that you want to await the response of this. So you're going to return and await the response of this output here. And again, I'm just going to put our timer function in. This one's called async this time, just so it's there. And then if I run this, I think this should work. But in all my YouTube videos, I seem to make some bugs. Yeah, run async was never awaited. Yes, right. So, okay, so I'm actually going to type this into dev. This is going to be called run async. So what's happened here is that I never awaited the result of this. I could do this in the main, but I'm going to make this slightly cleaner by doing it this way. So this function is basically going to call this function, but await the response. So in order to do that, you need to do AsyncIO.run, I think it is from memory, and then we're going to run async. No, it's not. No, the return of this statement. So we need to return that, but we're going to need to do that for however many times we have numbers of Pokemon. So number of Pokemons here. So these are going to be our like tasks. Actually, I'm just going to do this. So we're going to run asynchronously. These are going to be our tasks, but they're not. We're not awaiting. We're still not awaiting them yet. I know we're awaiting the response of this. So this is set up correctly, but we need to basically await all those tasks. So we're basically batching up all of our asynchronous tasks and then running them. So in order to do that, we need to do return await AsyncIO.gather, and then we need to pass it our tasks. I think that should be fine. Run async was never awaited, so it's complaining that we're not awaiting this. Okay, because yeah, so we're not awaiting this task. So in order to make this look easier, I'm actually gonna. So sorry, what's happening here is that we need to basically await the result of this task. So the process is quitting before this has executed its tasks, and Python doesn't like that. So in order to keep this function basically not an async one, it gets a bit messy if we have to do this here. What I'm going to do, so this is going to basically call this function, and then I'm going to rename this function to something like main, yeah, which is asynchronous. That's going to do all our things, and then here we just return await main. I think that should be it. No, I'm going to say result is equal to AsyncIO.run main. So we need to run that will await it, and then that will give us our results back. So here I can say pretty print name for our in results. We're going to call this function, which is going to run, so asynchronously run this main function, which is going to, for each one, we're going to spin off, we're going to make these asynchronous tasks, and then this AsyncIO will basically say, right, once all those tasks have come back, then gather them back and return them. So you're kind of spinning off this, creating tasks, because you notice we're not awaiting here. So spinning off all these tasks, awaiting the response back, this will basically build up a list of tasks, then it will actually execute them here and await the response, which will then return it back to this method, which returns it back to this method. And if my logic is right, that should just work. Oh, that doesn't need to be a asynchronous task, I don't think. Yes, cool. So the problem there is that was thinking that was an asynchronous task, but it's not, because this basically does all the await stuff for you, so this can just be a regular normal task. So cool, there we go. So we have run sync and we have run async here. So this run async, this async.run, basically you give it an asynchronous function, which we have here, and then it will run that asynchronously for you and return the results, and then you can pull the results out of here. So this main, what I've made here, is basically for 100 Pokemon, go off and run asynchronously and call them. So it goes off to this session client, calls the URL, and then awaits the response of that. So it's basically building up a batch of tasks, running them all at once, and then this method here is like waiting for their response to come back, which will then give it back to here, the results, and then we print them out. And as you can see, I'm just going to comment out the printing now, and zoom really in on my console. So you can see synchronously, look, we took 5.13 seconds, and asynchronously we took about half a second, 0.6 seconds. So you can see the speed there of rather than requesting each Pokemon and waiting for the data to come back, we're basically sending the request off, don't care if it comes back, sending the next one off, and then when the requests all do come back, then we're kind of collecting them up in this gather, we're collecting them, we're gathering the tasks back and then returning them to the function that's called us, which is this main AsyncIO here. So just run that again and look, we get synchronously we took 5 seconds, 5.9, nearly 6 seconds this time, and asynchronously we took a fraction of the time. So if you have any code basically that's HTTP, so making web requests, it's so much good to do that. It's so much better to do this synchronously because it just makes your life loads easier, well, way quicker, and you can impress all your friends. And then obviously we can just using this inspect is coroutine function. You can work out if a function is or isn't a coroutine, which is kind of for Python. It helps Python know if it should run this synchronously or asynchronously. There we go, everybody. So there was a quick tutorial on running asynchronous and synchronously. Hope that made sense to you. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. The link for this repo will be on my GitHub, so you can check that out at a later date. And you can also check out my latest video, which should be here or here. And please leave a comment, like, subscribe if you want more of this content. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.